everybody. Say hi to Christine. Welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for being here. Why are you guys nervous? I'm the one that's supposed to be nervous, not you guys.
Hi, everyone.
I told Christine she's not going to be able to see the emoji in this thing, but the Chris Queen, when it comes up, is her personalized emoji that Shannon made for everyone. So for those who don't know Christine, the first thing I'm going to do is I have a little clip from her closing that I'm going to play so we can all take a look at it and remember it. One of the best closings I've ever seen. Here's a little clip from the end of that closing. And let me know if make sure the audio works here. And it's not working. All right, hold on. Let me hold on, guys. I'll figure this out. Why is it not playing? Let me try this again. Oh, I got it. All right, hold on. We can all hear that?
No sound.
No audio. Son of a bee. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to figure this out. I don't know why. Let's try something else. It's not on mute, guys. It's not that. Let me see.
No, they were coming there to assault Zach in his dwelling. Furthermore, Zach moving further back into his garage clearly wasn't going to stop the attack. You see him, he's all the way almost at the kitchen door at one point. And they're still stomping on him. They're still kicking him. They're still putting him in a chokehold. They're doing all these things. Gage told you he was trying to flee into the kitchen and yelling for help. Gage himself told you that. Further retreat was not going to prevent this attack. Provocation, to the extent the state wants to say that this was provocation, that's on a specific occasion. That's not getting your feelings hurt 5 hours before. It's not getting your feelings hurt and then waiting and having a time to cool off and still coming down and attacking someone. The only people who provoked this were the Durhams. So here are some pictures. And as you can see in these pictures, and the state wants to make a big deal again about whether Zach's feet are on the black or the white. But again, that's not the law. You can consider the threshold. If somebody's trying to intrude, he doesn't need to wait until they are all the way into the garage before he tries to prevent the intrusion. He's allowed to try to stand in his threshold and prevent them from coming in. And that's what the law says. And it'll tell you things like a porch is considered part of the dwelling, okay? And it's not just, oh, this arbitrary line that you can't cross. And if you look at these images, by the time anything is done, Zach has 1 foot into that white. And by the time William Durham Sr. enters, you see that Zach is all the way in his garage. And William Durham Sr., based on the testimony of everyone in the video you watched, is pushing him further into the garage. They're in the garage. This is in the dwelling. All of these pictures show you Zach retreating and Zach being in the dwelling, because that's what happened here. The necessity of retreating, if it can be done safely before using deadly force, only applies outside the dwelling. Zach is never required to retreat from attack in his dwelling. In his dwelling, the force that Zach uses to respond need not be proportionate. He may respond to any attack with deadly force. Again, inside the dwelling includes the threshold to the dwelling. Furthermore, these are the things that the medical examiner told you can cause death. And it's stomping, punching, kicking, chokeholds. They can all cause death. Deadly force was being used against Zach in his garage. Here's Gage Durham stomping on Zach. Here's William Durham Jr. preparing to punch Zach. Here's William Durham Sr. tackling Zach as Zach attempts to get away. Here's William Durham Sr. with Zach in a chokehold. Here's Catherine showing up and attacking Sarah, someone who Zach also has a right to protect. Here's Catherine Durham Sr. pulling at Sarah's hair. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And in this case, you've seen all the pictures. And you're going to get a full picture of exactly what happened. You did already. This is the provocation. Catherine is the provocation. This is the attack. That is William Durham Sr. still not giving up, still getting Zach in a chokehold. There he is, tackling Zach, who's trying to get away. And there's Catherine, again, attacking Sarah. Members of the jury, you have listened to and seen all the evidence in the case. You know exactly what happened on that day. You know that Zachary was acting in self-defense. And I'm confident that at the end of this case, you're going to return a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
That was amazing. How do I get rid of this stupid thing? So amazing, Christine. Again, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Before we get into the case, I want to get a little on your background. So from what I understand, if I'm assuming your LinkedIn is right, you went to St. Joseph's and you got a bachelor's in history, and then you went to Rutgers Law. What made you want to be like? What made you get to be a public defender? What was that like?
So, where do we start? This part's going to show how big of a nerd I am. All right, so probably in 4th grade, I believe it was, I did a project on the presidents, and at that point, I learned that most of them had been lawyers, and I decided then and there that I wanted to be a lawyer. I also had a weird. Even as a young child, some of my favorite shows were Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted, and crimes just kind of always interested me in general. So by about 8th grade, I knew that I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. Had a close mentor who, a friend of mine in high school, his father took me under his wing, was an attorney, not a criminal defense attorney, but an attorney, and kind of mentored me. And by the time I graduated high school, I was pretty sure it was public defense that I wanted to do. And that ended up being the basis of my application to Rutgers Law. We have, you write an essay. And my essay was on how I wanted to be a public defender. And, it wasn't a linear path. I dabbled in some other things, but by October 2017, I joined the New Jersey Office of the Public Defender, and it's been fabulous.
Well, I'll tell you this, if you run for office, you have all of our votes. So if you continue down that path.
That's no longer a dream.
All right. Well, you have all of our votes if you do. So let me ask you this. When you first got the case, what did you think? When you got it, what did you think? Did you expect it to have this much exposure to the media when you got it? Like, what did you think of the case? First of all, what did you think when you got the case? And then did you expect it to blow up like it did?
So again, not really a quick answer, but the case was not actually initially mine. I actually was brought into this case, I want to say in September, when we were at pretrial, just before the pretrial conference. The case had been assigned to my coworker, Nathan Perry. Obviously, big deal in our county. There's 10 attorneys we're a statewide office, but in our county, there's 10 of us in our office. And from the beginning, there was a lot of media coverage of this because the family retained lawyers who kind of went on a media campaign, labeling Zach all sorts of terrible things that turned out to, as you watch the trial, not really be true. And Michael Gallagher, who was the, head of the vice president, I want to say, the PBA, was giving a lot of, was giving interviews and making comments as well. And so the media kind of got in on this pretty early. And there was some talk about that. And, that was concerning all along. But yeah, I mean, as soon as I saw the videos, I didn't understand why the case was charged.
Well, if William Durham wasn't a corrections officer, does he get charged? Do you think?
Probably not.
And Michael Gallagher is the gentleman that was in the gallery, right? He had like a gray shirt on the last day. That was him.
Yeah, I think he was sitting in the front row in the video clip you just showed. He's in the front row. It's him. I can't remember what he's wearing. And then there's a woman next to him who's wearing white pants.
And he's the one that set up the GoFundMe. Is that correct from what you understand? Do you know?
I don't really know
that
answer, so I don't want to give you a specific answer on that. But yeah, so the media was heavily involved early on.
When did they first start using the mugshot with the braids that wasn't even from this case? Like, was that immediate, or was that later on when bigger outlets started grabbing it?
I think that came later. I think that came when the bigger media outlets started grabbing it, and when it was gearing up towards trial, I think is when they started showing that a lot. Again, I got brought in September, and so I had known about the case. I knew all of that, but as far as like, I wasn't following the media along with it necessarily. I saw the news when it would come in, but that was about it.
Like they try to make this kid like a demon, and then they show him in the interrogation, and he's got a broken ankle, and he's offering his seat to the officer, and I'm just like, this kid, and like just the whole time I'm watching him, and I don't know if you know, if you didn't see the coverage, but they had it where for the majority of the trial until the end, it was the camera was on him, just him, and like you could just tell he had like PTSD. He did not want to see the clips. And yet they're still trying to portray him as this like demon. It was really upsetting. Did you watch any of the coverage as the case is going on, or you don't, like, you're in like a zone where you keep that out?
So I very specifically tried to avoid it. My own personal opinion. I didn't want the way that I handled the case, I knew this case. I knew Zach. I knew the case. I knew what I was doing. I knew how I wanted to approach the case. And I didn't want any of that to be influenced by outside perspectives and by trying to please cameras or anything else. I know my mother was watching, and it was driving her nuts. I would say, just don't tell me. I don't want to know what anybody has to say. I said, at the conclusion of the trial, you can tell me what you think. You can tell me anything you want to say. But, inevitably you'd be sitting there on the couch on a Friday night. My phone would buzz. I'd open it, and there's a TikTok of me cross-examining someone. And I'm like, guys, I mean it when I say.
It might have been mine. I had some TikToks that went a little big from this case, but it really upset me how they just demonized this kid, and just it wasn't the case.
I don't see how you watch that interrogation and like feel anything but like empathy and sympathy. He was a child.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, tactically, to me, that seemed like a huge mistake for the prosecution to show that, because like you said, it made him, like, you felt for him. He's punching the wall. He can't believe it. And of course, they tell him there, he doesn't even know that he had passed away. They tell him there, he's crushed. They're not treating him great. Was that like, I guess they try to show, because they try to show he had some inconsistencies, but then she says, like you said in your closing, show me the video. I want to tell you guys what happened. Like, do you think that, like, why would they, it seemed like an error to me to show that.
I think you're pretty on point. I think the goal was to show that Zach, in their opinion, was a liar, as opposed to like an 18-year-old kid who'd just been through a major trauma and had a concussion and was injured and was trying to like sort out, like, this is what happened. This is my memory of what happened. I mean, he's telling them it's a little foggy. Yeah, show me the video. I'll tell you what's happening in each of those clips. And then he does. So I understand where they were coming from with like attempting to do that, but I don't think it played out well. I think that people who watched that saw what you saw, and saw a, traumatized kid who's just doing his best and is being nothing but polite and deferential.
Could you tell? We can't see the jury, obviously, but could you tell when they're watching it? Did it have an effect on them?
So it's always difficult to read a jury.
Right. Yeah.
And for good reason, they do their best to keep a poker face, but you do see every once in a while, one of them, like, they'll make a face, they'll look sad, and I do think that it was disturbing for some of them to see some of what they had to see throughout this trial.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, one thing I want to ask you, like, he tells them on the scene, we have that body cam footage. I think I have a concussion. Goes to the hospital. We don't have those records, but I assume to get treated for a concussion. Goes into this interrogation room, tells that officer, I have a concussion, and he confirms it. They're allowed to interrogate him then? That's when he has a head injury? Is that allowed?
Yeah, so the way that statements are analyzed under New Jersey state law, it's a totality of the circumstances standard to determine whether a statement is knowing, voluntary, and intelligent. And in this case, it was decided that it was. And so that's, what you're stuck with. And that's just how you have to go. But it's dependent on the case. There's no hard and fast, this level of a brain injury or whatever means that it's not. No, the judge has to decide based on the totality of the circumstances.
Okay. All right. Now, question, just a side question about the courtroom. What's the deal? Why is it so hot in there? I speculated that, and some of us speculated that maybe you're in Jersey, the lights are tanning lights because everyone has to get their gym tan laundry. So the lights are really hot. Why can't they figure out the heat situation? What's going on in there?
Everybody does love a good GTL in Jersey, but
Yeah.
that is not what we were doing. So it's like an annual issue, which is the craziest part of all of it. I don't know where you're located, but
Long Island, New York. I'm close.
okay. So yeah, so the weather in this area around this time of year can be hit or miss. So, I think it was 88 last week at one point. And so I think some days there was an issue with like the actual, like early on, there was one day where it was 88 degrees in that courtroom. I won't lie. I felt like I was going to pass out at one point. There was a day where it just actually wasn't working. At one point, we were told that it's because typically they don't kick on the air conditioning until May because it's usually not hot enough for that until then. It did start to get better towards the end.
Kick that thing on, man. I would have died if it was 88 in there.
It was, yeah.
Also, it seems like a lot of wires in that courtroom. Seems like a fire hazard. They might want to look into that. We all noticed that. A lot of wires going on there. A lot of ports and stuff. That's seemed like an issue.
They have technology, everything's plugged in everywhere.
All right, so let me back to the trial, and probably the biggest point of the trial for you, I would assume, is cross on Catherine Durham. Did you? I assume you did, but did you expect her to be as combative as she was when you did cross?
Yes. I'd never met her before. I had never spoken to her before, but having watched the video, I had a feeling that she would be a somewhat combative person. Just knowing how the case was handled by the family from the time the charges were filed and the media stuff, it was clear that there was on her behalf, it didn't seem that there was any sort of a acceptance of responsibility for her role.
That was my next question is, do you think it would have played different with the jury if she went up there and said, I am so sorry. I wish this would never happened. I mean, the videos are the videos, so I don't know if it would have changed, but I just feel like, she was like fighting with you, on things that we have proof of. Like, we have the video. Why are you fighting over this? Like, it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I think it probably would have played different with the jury, but it also probably would have played different with me. I would have treated her much differently if she had gotten up there and kind of just answered the questions as they were asked. If I didn't have to fight with her, I don't want to fight with a witness. That's not my goal. Man's dead.
Right.
I don't like. I'm not interested in rubbing that in your face. It's terrible. We admitted from day one. This is a tragedy. But at the same time, I've now been informed I was called a bully for that. I've not seen that either. I've been informed that I was called a bully.
I lost my mind when it went from you to a commentator, and they're like, "Oh, she needs to step back," and I lost my mind because I'm like, "Are you not watching the same trial?" It was maddening. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. But yeah, I mean, she kind of left me no choice. Like, if you're not going to acknowledge what we know, what we've seen, what we've heard, then I have to show it to you and let you not acknowledge what we know and what we've seen and what we've heard.
Right. Speaking of, I don't know about you, and you've seen these videos 1,000 more times than I have. I mean, I've seen them enough. Does her voice haunt your dreams? You're 18. Come on. And like the scream when she falls back. Come on. Did you hit me? You're 18. It's in my head. Like, I can't get it out. Does that like, do you have like a visceral, like, can you get that out of your head? I can't.
No, I can hear it. The second you started, I can hear the video playing in my head.
It's just like, just so aggressive. And like, let me ask you this. The comment, you're 18, come on, to me, and this was premeditated. This was planned. Whether it was this trip that when he came back or a different time, obviously all of a sudden they said there was a video, but there's no video. There's a picture. We don't know from when. This is going to happen no matter what. I mean, not necessarily the circumstances, but they were going to confront him no matter what, right? I mean,
I think they were waiting for a day to put him in his place or to have their kids put him in his place. And I think they thought the safest time was after he turned 18. First of all, I mean, it's twofold. One, they can try to get him charged as an adult for any of his actions. And two, it's a crime to endanger the welfare of a minor. So as an adult, you physically attack, even if you have your 20, William Durham Jr. was, I think Billy he was in his early to mid 20s. I'm going to say 20, somewhere between 22 and 24. You have him attack somebody under the age of 18. Maybe those charges come out different than if he waits till they're 18 and now it's just a mutual fight, maybe petty disorderly persons offense. Or again, maybe you're lucky and you get Zach charged. Now he's an adult. He's facing an indictable level conviction.
Right. And I also thought it was telling, first of all, when you asked about was he drinking, and she's like, I'm sure he was. It was just like so matter of fact. I'm sure William Durham was drinking. And also, I mean, were you drinking? Probably nothing. I mean, you said it in your closing, and you said, like, come on, probably nothing.
Well, and to me, if you listen to her voice in the video, it is different than her voice on the stand. Both were angry, but to me, there was a difference, and I'll just leave it at that.
I can definitely hear that. Yeah. So yeah, that's just more. I hear you. What else I got here? All right. So here's a question that a lot of people want to know. When did you guys decide that you were just gonna not call any witnesses and just go from there? I thought it was the move. I said from the beginning, but that must have been a tough decision. When did you make that decision to just go from there?
So after the state closed their case, I mean, I don't think you ever can make that decision until you know all the evidence in front of you. So once we saw that, and Mr. Perry and I had a chance to chat, and we didn't see what it would bring to the case to drag it out any further or to call anybody else.
What if it went differently? Were there any witnesses that you had thought about calling? I mean, to me, the prosecution's case was your guys' case. There was nothing there that they presented to prove their case. So like, you didn't have to, but if they did differently, was there anyone you thought about?
I mean, so there's always like investigators with our office who have done work that could be called for various reasons, including if a witness gets on the stand and lies and doesn't want to admit that they lied. And, we now have this person to say, I was present, I heard it. Obviously, Zach is a big call at the end of the day. Do you testify in your own defense or not? And that's Zach's call. We advise, we can do all of that, but at the end of the day, it's the defendant who gets to make that choice. So that's a big consideration, and especially in a self-defense case.
Right. One of the witnesses I've got to bring up, his friend is Dylan, right? Was his friend
Dylan? Yeah.
The second day, do you think that morning? Do you think maybe that night he went out and maybe partied a little bit? I know you obviously don't. He seemed a little tired and like almost falling asleep. Did you catch that? Or
So my interactions with Dylan, he was a really nice kid. I think that he was there, and he was a state's witness. We didn't call him, but I think he was probably thinking, why is the state even calling me?
I'm his friend.
Yeah, I'm his friend. I have other things going on in my well, and it's not even necessarily that, but again, you saw on the, he's probably thinking, you saw on the video what happened. What do you think I'm going to give you
Right.
that you haven't already seen? And in the meantime, it's not easy when you're called in these cases. These witnesses are subpoenaed, and typically on like an on-call subpoena, and then we guess basically when we need you. So in those days, sometimes those witnesses are giving up days of their lives. They might be doing all sorts of missing all sorts of various activities or things that they would other. So I don't know if he was just thinking, why am I still here?
Okay, that makes
And
sense.
I haven't talked to him about it, so I honestly don't know.
It's funny with him and with Zach's grandfather were the two times I noticed Zach, because they had the camera, like he kind of tried to do a little like to his buddy. It seemed like he just kind of like a little like, and he did, and he smiled, and like he had emotion with when his grandfather was up there too. So those were two moments where the whole time I'm just thinking, I have a 14-year-old, I have kid, like
So you get it.
I just the whole time I'm just thinking this poor kid has been sucked into this for nothing. He did nothing. He was trying to go home. So, and he just had those moments, especially the smiling with his grandfather. And it really, I mean, all the moments really just hit home. And then at the end, I told you when I watched first of all, what is it like after you close? Did you think that maybe that day you were gonna get a decision? I mean, those jury instructions were rough. I mean, that was rough. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the Micro Machine guy. There were points who talks really fast, but there were points where he was explaining it, and then there were points where the judge was talking so fast that like I couldn't keep up with him. That was a tough little time there with the judge. Have you had a case with him before? Are those where he's like with the instructions always?
Yeah, so I had actually just finished a trial in front of him immediately prior to this. So part of the issue is that in this case, there's the jury instructions, and they are what they are. And in this case, they were 34 pages long.
Wow.
And he has to read all of them. And if he doesn't, there could be potential issues on appeal. Like, what if the jury didn't consider this instruction, or what if they didn't? And so I think when you hear him speaking quickly, it's because, okay, I've already gone over what serious bodily injury is 1,000 times. So I'm going to speed through this as quick as I can. He knows that everybody's falling asleep at that point, right? It's not.
You got the tan lights on them. It's hot. They want to get their laundry done.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody, and so I get it. It's necessary, but it's an hour and a half. I think that probably that day, what I anticipated was they would go back and, they get back to the jury room. There's 12. In this case, there were 12 of them. Usually we have 2 alternates, but we had lost 2 jurors already. So there's 12 of them. They need to use the restroom. They need to get a drink. They need to mentally decompress for a second and try to, and then they need to understand again, not just what the judge read, but now they have the jury instructions in front of them, and they have a verdict sheet in front of them, and they have the indictment. They have to consider all these charges. I wasn't overly shocked they didn't come back that night. And we had brought them back in. I think this was streamed, but we brought them back in at like a little bit after 4:30 to say, do you want to keep going tonight, or do you want to come back? And they had said, no, we're going to break for the night. We'll come back tomorrow.
A couple of things I forgot to ask about the closing. One for you, like I said, I've seen some closings and they were awful. You had everything. It was concise. It was to the point. You clearly were passionate about it. You knew the case. How long do you prepare for that and like set everything up? Like you didn't have a timer in your PowerPoint that didn't go off. So how long did you prepare for that?
Yeah. So as we were anticipating the state was nearing the end of the case, I started putting together the PowerPoint and had an idea. I probably spent, so the fun of being a lawyer is work's never done, right? You don't get to just clock off at 5 o'clock. I can't stop my brain if it wants to think, it thinks. So I probably spent 48 hours or so But going through the slideshow again and again, I'm not somebody who writes out every word of my closing. I like to come across more natural than that. I like to just talk. So I put together the PowerPoint over like the course of a day or so. At night after the trial, I would go through, and then the next night I went through and I, added some slides here and there. What do I think that I maybe need to touch on that wasn't previously in it? Speaking to Mr. Perry, what do you see that maybe I should be adding into this? But yeah, it was probably a couple of days of focusing on that.
And did you guys agree from like the beginning that you were going to do the closing, or is that something where you decided towards the end, or how was that? Was that game time decision? Well,
It was
obviously you prepared.
always it was always kind of fluid. We both knew that there was a chance that it could be either one of us. And Nate did some tremendous work on the jury charges were really important in this case and stuff like that. And he was on top of all of that. And so I think at the end of it just came down to like, I had the time, I had been putting together a slideshow. It just made more sense that I just get up there and do it.
And one thing I want to ask you also about the prosecution's closing that really bothered me, and I wonder if it bothered you. And I had, when we were watching, I don't know if defense attorney Bob Mata I had on, and he's another defense attorney, and this point was brought up. There's a point where he's playing a video and he's saying to the jury, "Did you guys hear him say, 'Come get him,' wherever it was?" And he's purposely playing the wrong video, and it really pissed me off. And Bob said, it's not good form during a closing to object, but that's something potentially you could object. I thought that was dirty pool. What were your thoughts about that move?
So I don't know. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know the time period you're talking about, right? He played the video and said, something along the lines of, it's up to you to determine what
And
your senior said during this. It's not for us to tell you. And he played it, and I still hear it as, he's 18 now, get him, or get him, he's 18 now. I forget which way it was. But then the second time he played it, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, he didn't play it until Catherine was the one talking, I think it was. And I was kind of like, well, and I think the jury probably catches on to something like that. It's why I owned in my closing, for some reason, the clip we had it stopped before Zach says, "Call the cops, tell them they assault." And then it stops. And for some reason, the "call the cops, tell them they didn't play." And so I just owned it. I just said, this part didn't play. I don't know why. State's going to make a big deal out of it, but this is what he said.
See, I thought, so maybe I misconstrued. I thought he was referring to the part by the garage where he says to his son, "You got me." But yeah. But you're saying when he was bringing up her saying, "You got me," in the first clip. So that's what he was setting up.
So I think what he was saying. So I had brought out through one of the law enforcement witnesses, I can't remember which one right now. I have brought out that William Durham Sr.'s hanging out of the truck window.
Right.
Remember that part? And he's screaming stuff, but you can't always hear what he says. And it's right before Catherine Durham says, "What are you going to do? You're 18 now," or whatever that line was. You can hear Senior right before that say something along the lines of either, "Get him, he's 18 now," or "He's 18 now, get him."
Okay. All right.
The law enforcement officer the first time testified, "No, I didn't hear that." And I rewound the clip and played it again. And he was like, "Ooh, it's the first time I'm hearing it. But yes, now I hear what you're saying." I think that's what the prosecutor was getting at when he was talking about that. But it still didn't start until after the second clip still didn't start until after what William Durham Sr. had said.
Right.
So yeah, I think that kind of fell on deaf ears. I don't think that really impacted the jury.
Okay. And now, all right. So you guys, both of your closings, they got to the end of the day. Was the first question the next day, or was it the first question? I think it was the second. Both questions were the second.
Both came the second day.
What were you thinking after each question? Like, did you think it was good for you or bad for you?
So it's always nerve-wracking. I mean, you're sitting there and you're overanalyzing every second of what a jury is thinking. After the first question, at first, my thought was, I was confused by the question. I think pretty much everybody was. But I was like, okay, they're back there. They're having real discussions. They want to know that self-defense applies to this charge, because that was what the question was basically about. So I was like, okay, I'll take that one in stride. And then the second question, when they came back, I was like, what are they looking at? And so Mr. Perry and I went into the hallway and we talked. And then we came back out and I kept thinking, and finally what my mind came down to, and this is just me speculating, I think that they were watching this. They wanted to watch the video again to determine whether Zach was either retreating or inside the dwelling at the point of his encounter with William Durham Jr. I think at that point they had already made up their minds on the reckless manslaughter. And so once they did that, you skip through all those other charges and you get to the question about William Durham Jr. So then they watched that, and pretty quickly thereafter we had the verdict.
Yeah, I was a little concerned. I'm like, haven't we seen this video enough? You guys need it slowed down enough? I mean, it was both clips were played so many times, so it was a little concerning, but obviously, thankfully, the right decision came in. So yeah, that makes sense. And I thought it was interesting. So threshold, there's no real threshold. You just kind of got to wing it. That was crazy to me when the judge said that. Like, how could that's such a big thing, but it's kind of just it's a judgment call on the jury.
Yeah, so it's a question of fact for the jury is what the judge decided, and there's no clear cut definition. And I think that's because the threshold really isn't. And this is something the judge did say, and he did, I think he did a good job after the prosecutor's closing of explaining to the jury in his limiting instructions, like what the prosecutor said that's not law, because there was a lot that went into that. That closing was pretty misleading. But it's because there is no magic line, right? Think about what you would consider the threshold of your front door. Do you have to have your toes behind the little metal part that I'm sure has a word for it, but I'm not handy, so I don't know what that word is. But like, do your toes have to be behind that? Or can you be standing on it? Or is it okay to go out onto your front step and say, you can't be here, back up? Like, again, the law all says you don't have to wait for the person to be inside of your home. So I think that that's where it gets down to. And, the porch is a threshold. So if we can have a 5-foot wide porch, let's say, in front of a home, and I'm allowed to stand on that and protect myself, why am I not allowed to stand on the apron of my driveway?
Right.
In front of my open garage door that leads to into the rest of the dwelling and everything else. And the garage is very clearly the dwelling. Like, why can't I do that?
Right. All right. So you hear the jury has the decision and they read it. But bring us, what's the emotions? What's that like when you get that decision?
I don't know that there's a way to describe it. I wanted to cry. Zach very clearly did, break down. It's so emotional. You've fought so hard for someone, and you truly, like in this case, like I truly believed in every ounce of my being that Zach was in the right in this case, right? Like that poor kid went through enough, and he's been through a lot. And now he's sitting there and, you can see his breathing. You can see that he's just trying to hold himself together before they say a word. And so then to have that, this is the kind of case that keeps you up in the middle of the night. I was up at the day I closed, I was up at 2:30 in the morning. And didn't go, like, that was it. I was up for the day at 2:30 in the morning because that's how important it is. And that's how much is on the line. And so, and you don't always get the right verdict. These are 12 strangers. You know nothing about them. And this kid has trusted them with his life. And he's trusted you. I mean, the amount of trust it takes for anyone to say, I'm going to let you do this. Like, you take me into battle. Like, I'll follow you. I'll do what you, I trust you. So to have that, I mean, to just keep a straight face in the courtroom was very difficult.
To me, I mean, I did cry. I told you I did cry. And I think one of the other things was,
I mean, you can see right now, I'm trying.
I'm going to try not to cry when I bring this up, but to me, like, he was looking at you. It didn't seem like he had anyone else there. So like, it was almost like you're his family there. Like in that moment, like you were the person that he has trusted this whole time. I mean, it's like you said, but it just really hit me. Like just to have you there, like you're his person there. Like there's really no one else to support him there. Like, I feel like it was just a double shot there that I don't know.
It's one of the most rewarding parts of the job, and also one of the most, that's what brings a lot of the pressure, like for a couple of years, and maybe this is part of what makes Zach so, makes this case so emotional for me. I carried our juvenile list for 2 years. I had kids who, when asked in their different evaluations, like to name positive supports in their lives, I had one kid who the only person he could write was my name. And you're like, oh my God,
It's like you're their family. It's like you were.
incredibly, it's a privilege to be that person. And it's the biggest compliment you'll ever receive. But the amount of pressure when you know that you're the person they're relying on. And for Zach, he does have, his grandfather is supportive. I'm not going to talk about his family life. That's for him to comment on, or his family to comment on. But to know that somebody trusted you with all that, to know that somebody is willing to sit there, like I said, to sit there and trust you to do that for them it's a huge privilege.
Well, we all were just emotional because we knew how much you put into it. So thank you. Is there anything I missed, guys? One thing, I know a lot of people ask this question. Christine can't comment it. I could just tell you that if you go to GoFundMe and you look up Zach's information, you may be able to find something, you may not, but you can go there and research for yourself. Go to GoFundMe, Google it. You can find it for yourself. She can't comment, but check it out, guys. I think, well, here's a question: Zach is released at this point? Can you tell us? Is he like, or you can't comment on it?
I don't want to go into his stuff as far as like his Florida case. He still has to deal with the Florida case. I know initially he was released on bail out of there. It was New Jersey that kind of brought him back here. So hopefully, he can resolve the Florida stuff and just move on. And
Oh, here's a question I forgot that I definitely wanted to ask. Thank you, guys. In your closing statement, when you said Karen, was that a Freudian slip? Was that on purpose? That just popped up?
I've been asked this by so many people. It was actually 100% an accident. It was a Freudian slip. Again, there's 12 strangers sitting there deciding the fate. The last thing I want to be or do is upset any one of those 12 people for any reason. So I wouldn't do something like that as just a gotcha moment. Like, I don't need to insult her. She's sitting in the back of the court. I don't need to do that. That's, I know people thought it was funny. But yeah, no, that was actually an accident.
One thing, now that I think of it, there was a lot of reaction from the gallery during specific parts. And I could see the judge in certain times looking back on there. Was that reported to you? Is that like, shouldn't there be some sort of admonishment that there should be no reaction from the gallery?
So the judge did admonish the gallery on a couple of occasions off camera regarding what was and wasn't allowed to be done by them. Prior to the verdict, he did ask everyone in the courtroom, all the way across the board, please, no reactions. This jury has a difficult job to do, and they don't need to feel any sort of, pressure from the gallery or anyone else, or any guilt or any, excitement. They don't need any of that. So everybody was warned prior to the verdict to compose themselves.
Do you guys poll the jury after? Do you talk to them?
We're not allowed to.
You're not? Oh.
So as the attorneys in the state, so I did some military law stuff for a little while in private practice, and they, the judges would talk to you afterwards, or, you would get direct feedback. In New Jersey, the attorneys are not allowed to contact the jurors to speak about any of this. If the jurors themselves want to talk to the media or anyone else, they can, but we're not allowed to approach them. Right? I would love feedback. I would love to know more about what I'm doing that's effective, what's not, but that's where we're at.
Sorry, did you think it was weird that I thought it was weird? So Court TV's covering this case, couldn't find a journalist in New Jersey who was there covering it. Was that odd to you?
So I think the way Court TV works, because they cover cases all around the country, they don't have necessarily journalists in each state. What they do is they send out their camera crews and stuff to various states to cover the trial that they want to cover. And then the actual journalism happens at a central location.
But like New Jersey didn't, like, I'm surprised, like NJ.com, like there were some articles and stuff, but there was no one there, right? It was like reporting on this.
So the very first day of the trial, there was a journalist present as well as a camera person I believe from NJ.com.
Oh, okay.
They were sitting right in the front row. But I think after that, what happens is they're trying to cover the whole state. So if they have something like Court TV that's going to stream this and they can actually just watch it, they can kind of multitask. If there's somewhere that they have to be that they can't, and that's speculation on my part, but that's what I would imagine.
Okay. All right, guys. Did I miss anything? Any questions for Christine? I don't know if you've been seeing the chat, but we all appreciate all you did.
I have not seen the chat. I'll be honest. I don't know where to go to even see the chat, but I do appreciate everybody's support. I know, I don't know how much of this Zach's seen, but I know he would appreciate all of the support as well.
I think we had someone in here in the chat the verdict day who may have worked with you. I don't know if they reached out to you. They said that they worked with you, but I don't know if they did.
So I know I have a very supportive office. So everybody has been like, there were some members of my office behind us when the verdict was read. There's text constantly going. Everybody's been really incredibly supportive. So yeah, it's been great, and I really do appreciate it.
Let me ask you this: do you have anything? You don't seem to have like much social media. From what I was trying to, anything like you want to promote? You have an Etsy. Do you have anything that you want to that we can help? We want to support you however we can, Christine. You run for office. We're voting for you. Tell us how we can support you, please.
So listen, I think that the best way to support is to spread the message you're spreading. That you keep an open mind. Don't come to these just because the state says something's true doesn't mean it's true. There are defendants, there are people sitting in jail every day who are innocent. And if it's not for this kind of attention, if the state's not held to its burden, if they're not, if there is no sort of oversight of that, it's an immense power that they have. And so don't let Zach be the last Zach as far as your support. Public defenders do wonderful things every day, sometimes get a bad rap, but we're some of the best defense attorneys out there. And I know the Office of the Public Defender in the state of New Jersey is the best law firm in the state of New Jersey. And, and so I'm happy for Zach. I'm relieved for Zach, and I really appreciate the support.
Well, thank you so much for being on here. If you go to the comments, I don't know if you see the comments.
I see it now. I had the whole thing pulled up so I could see you better.
So if you go through there, I see it. Everyone is saying you're the best. We thank you so much for all your hard work. Thank you so much for coming on with me. And I guess that's it. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much, Christine.
And best of luck with the next trial.
I want to ask you, possibly, if we have future cases where we need the opinion of a defense attorney, maybe you can come on and give us, if you, I know you're busy. I know you have case to case, but if you ever have any off time, you have an open invite, you ever want to come on the show, talk about a case, you let me know and I'll have you on.
Thank you so much, Jay. I appreciate it, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.